Today in this 2018 Chevrolet Silverado 3500, we'll be having a look at and showing you how to install the Airlift LoadLifter 5000 Ultimate Air Helper Springs, part number AL88338. Here's what our airbags look like installed. Now the reason you're going to want a set of airbags for your vehicle is if you're towing a heavy trailer with a high tongue weight or loading a lot of cargo or materials in the back of your truck, the back of your truck's going to sag down and it's going to cause some poor handling characteristics for your vehicle. By raising your suspension back up with the airbags, this is going to cause your vehicle to drive a lot more like stock. These will allow you to support up to 5,000 pounds of weight. Now it's not going to increase your gross vehicle weight rating by 5,000 pounds, it's just going to help your factory suspension work like it was designed to. What's great about airbags compared to other options like the Timbren vehicle suspension enhancement that we have on our website is that these are adjustable. So if you have more weight on one side of your truck and your truck's leaning to one side, you can simply add more air to that airbag to level it out. These airbags support anywhere between 5 and 100 psi of air pressure. So if you're going to just have a little bit of weight in the truck, you can run less air. If you have a lot of weight in the truck or you're towing a really heavy trailer, you'll need more air to level it out. We're going to take a few baseline measurements here of our vehicle with its factory suspension without any heavy weight in the bed of the truck or a heavy trailer attached. We'll start off by measuring through the center of our back wheel and tire up to the top of our wheel opening here. We're about 42.5 inches. Now we'll go get the same measurement on the front. Okay, we're about at 40 inches. We now have a substantial amount of weight in the bed of the truck. We're going to double check our measurements and see where they compare to factory. Okay, in the rear we're now about 41 inches, so we dropped down about 1.5 inches. In the front we're about 40.5, so we've come up about 1/2 inch. Okay, now that we have the airbags installed, we have the weight back in the bed of the truck. We're going to double check our measurements here and compare them to stock. Okay, we're back at 42.5 inches in the rear. And we're back at 40 inches in the front, so the front has gone back to its normal position and is at factory ride height. So what this means by being back at factory ride height, our truck is no longer squatting down the rear with the front end coming up. And this is important because as we take the weight off the front tires, we're losing our steering and handling capabilities. It's also causing what's called positive camber on our tires, which will wear the outside edge faster and not an even wear pattern all across the tread of the tires. Additionally, it's going to bring our headlight angle back down to where it's supposed to be, so it's not aiming up at the trees or it's going to blind oncoming drivers. It's back down on the road so we can see safely as we're driving at night. And now we'll take our airbags out on our test course. On the left side of the screen, you'll notice the truck without the airbags installed, and on the right side of the screen, you'll notice the truck with the airbags installed. In the first part of our test course, we'll be doing some evasive maneuvering and some quick turns and side-to-side action. You'll notice how unstable and unsettled the suspension is without the airbags installed, and with them installed, you'll notice how much more settled and more control we have over the vehicle. There is less body roll than we had without them, and on the next part of the test course, we'll be going over some bumps. And you'll notice without the airbags installed how much suspension travel we don't have. The suspension can't do its job properly because it's sagging down and doesn't have the amount of travel that it needs in order to help absorb the bumps. With the airbags installed, you can see how much less jouncing and jarring there is going on. And it's because the suspension is able to do its job properly with having the weight being supported by the airbags. This will give us much more handling and braking ability with the airbags installed, giving us the safety that we need when we're towing a heavy load or have a lot of weight in the back of our truck. To begin our install, we went ahead and removed our spare tire. We've also taken some of the weight off of our rear axle to let the suspension hang a little bit. You can do that by placing jack stands underneath the frame and jacking the vehicle up a little bit. This is our factory bump stop. We need to remove this. In order to remove it, you can take a flathead screwdriver, stick it inside the cup, pry down, and then pull to remove. Now just forward of our bump stop cup on the driver's side frame rail, we have this 13mm bolt that holds our parking brake cable bracket in place. We need to remove this bolt. And we'll also remove the bracket. We'll do that by pulling it off of the frame, spinning it upside down, and then pulling it off the cable. Now we have this bracket that holds our brake line and ABS wire to the axle. It's held in place with a 13mm bolt. We'll remove this bolt. We'll pull this back against our shock to make a little bit of room. Now we'll take one of our air springs. This is the top because it has the fitting for our air line to go into. Take one of our roll plates, place it on top. Now we'll take one of our fittings and we'll screw it in finger tight. Once we have it finger tight, we'll spin the fitting around so it points at a 90-degree angle to the line where our bolts are. We'll take a wrench and then we'll tighten it 1.5 turns. So there's 1.5. Now we'll take our driver's side upper bracket. This notch here will go around our fitting. The holes line up. We'll take our button head screws and secure the pieces together. Now we'll tighten these screws down. Now we'll torque these bolts to the amount specified in the instructions. With our assembly flipped over now, we'll place another roll plate on the bottom, and we'll take our bottom bracket and attach it with the angle side on the same side as the fitting, which is this side of our airbag assembly. We'll use our same button head screws to secure it into place. We'll tighten these bolts and we'll torque these bolts. This is what our airbag assembly looks like assembled for the driver's side. The passenger side will be a mirror image. This portion here will face up, go into the frame rail, and now we'll go ahead and put it in position on the vehicle. We'll take our U-bolts, place them over our frame, and we're going to swing them down around the frame, making sure that any of our wiring harnesses go over the bolt and not the bolt over the harness. So we'll have one on the behind our cup, and then we'll have one in front of our cup. Just like that. On the front one, we want to make sure that our brake lines go over the bolt and not the bolt over the brake lines. Now we'll grab our parking brake cable here and we'll pull it down a little bit out of the way to give us some room to work. Now we'll take our airbag assembly and we'll work it into position, going around all of our brake lines and hoses. Make sure our U-bolts go through the holes in the assembly. Now we'll place a flat washer and a nylon lock nut onto our U-bolts. So I'll have 4 in total, 1 in each side of our U-bolt. Now we'll tighten down our U-bolts in an even pattern. Now we'll torque our bolts to the amount specified in the instructions, again in an alternating pattern to make sure everything's done evenly. Now we'll put our carriage bolts into the slotted hole in our lower bracket. We'll have one in the back and one in the front. Now we'll take our axle clamp bracket and place our carriage bolts into the holes in it. And we'll place a flat washer and a nylon lock nut onto our bolts. Now we'll go ahead and tighten the nuts on our carriage bolts. And we'll do this in an alternating pattern, just like we did on the U-bolts. Now we'll torque our bolts to the amount specified in the instructions. Now we'll take our brake line and ABS wire bracket. The tab will go into the non-threaded hole, and the other hole will go over the threaded hole, and we'll secure it with a new metric bolt and washer. Tighten that down securely. Now we'll take our parking brake cable and we'll move it back up near its original position. We'll take our new parking brake cable bracket, we'll open it up a little bit, and we'll slide it around the cable. Close it back up, lining up our 2 holes in it. Now we'll swing this up, sliding up our cable, and it's going to go over the inside forward U-bolt, and this is how it'll be secured into place. And we'll take our serrated flange nut now, and thread it onto that U-bolt. With our driver's side airbag assembly now in place, we will repeat the same process to get the passenger side assembly in place. Now we'll take an airline tubing cutter, which we have available on our website, and cut our airline tubing into 2 equal halves. This will ensure that we get a nice straight cut. Now we need to find a location to mount our inflation valves for our airbags. We're looking at the driver's side, right in front of our license plate light. This is a perfect spot to do it right here. Be readily accessible for our air chuck to fill up the airbags. So we'll just drill a hole for the size indicated in the instructions. Now we'll take our fitting end of our airline section, thread on one of our nuts, place on the star washer, and we'll feed this up from behind the bumper into this location here. Now we'll take a rubber washer, place it on our fitting, place our flat washer on, and thread on our nut, and we'll just snug this down. We went ahead and routed our air lines towards our airbag just by going inside of our frame rail, carrying it forward, and then there's a hole above our airbag assembly where our air line comes out of. And we did this on both sides of the vehicle. All right, now we'll cut off our excess air line, making sure we leave a little slack in it in case we ever need some. With it cut off, we'll now take our air line and push it into our fitting until it stops. We'll pull back to make sure it's secure. On our passenger side, before we connect our airline tubing to the bag, we'll slide our heat shield tubing over the airline just to help better protect it from the exhaust. When you route your airlines, it is important to avoid any moving parts or sources of heat, which is why I chose to route ours inside the frame rail, because there's nothing hot or moving inside there. Okay. We went ahead and used our provided heat shield and attached it to our exhaust using the provided clamps to help protect our airbags from the heat. To do that, you'll simply open up your clamps, wrap them around your tailpipe, and tighten the clamps back down a little bit, slide them over your heat shield after you've bent it into shape around the curve of the exhaust, and then just clamp it down and it'll hold itself in place. All right, now we'll add some air to our system and check for any leaks. We went ahead and sprayed all of our connection points with soapy water. And we're looking for bubbles. If we see any air bubbles, that means we have a leak. In our case, we didn't see any, so we know we're good. And that completes our look at and showing you how to install the Airlift LoadLifter 5000 Ultimate Air Helper Springs, part number AL88338 on this 2018 Chevrolet Silverado 3500.